If you're listening late at night, maybe you'll want to stay until the end. Something happened to me, and to this day, I can't understand it. My name is Lucas. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a night watchman. Or I used to. I don't know if I can still say I work there. I don't know if I even exist anymore. I took this job out of desperation, recent divorce, mounting debts, and a third-party security company that didn't ask many questions. The pay was too good to be true. Abandoned commercial building in downtown Detroit, they said. 12 floors, just patrolling, nothing more. Nothing else. On the first night, I arrived at 10 o'clock. The building was on a deserted street, surrounded by other empty buildings and parking lots covered in trash. The facade was made of dark glass, cracked in several places, with condemned property signs posted on the main entrance. I had a master key and a powerful flashlight, nothing else. I went in. The silence was the first thing that struck me. It wasn't ordinary silence. It was dense, heavy, as if the air inside the building was thicker than the air outside. My footsteps echoed in the dust-covered marble lobby. The emergency lights flickered faintly in the corridors. The smell was of mold, old paper, and something metallic that I couldn't identify. I started my tour on the ground floor. Office doors with broken glass, overturned desks, files scattered across the floor. Everything seemed frozen in time, as if people had run away and never returned. I climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway was long, lined with faded red carpet. All the doors were locked. I checked each one, locked. I noted it in the report. It was on the third floor that I felt it for the first time. A presence. I can't explain it properly. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. But I felt someone was watching me. I turned quickly, pointing my flashlight at the empty hallway behind me. Nothing, just shadows dancing on the walls. I took a deep breath. It's only the first day, I thought. Nervousness. I continued climbing. On the fourth floor, one of the doors was unlocked. I knew I'd checked that door before going upstairs. I'd checked it twice. It was locked. Now it was open. Just ajar, as if someone had pushed it slightly and left. I entered slowly. The office was small, with a wooden desk and a chair overturned on the floor. The window was broken. A cold wind blew in, making the torn curtains sway. It was the wind, I convinced myself. Just the wind. But when I went outside and closed the door, I heard it. Steps above me, slow, deliberate, as if someone were walking on the fifth floor. One step, pause. Another step, pause. My heart raced. I ran up the stairs, pushing open the door to the fifth floor with all my might. Empty. I ran down the hallway, opening every door I could. Empty. All of them empty. But as I searched the floor, I heard it again. This time, the footsteps came from above, from the sixth floor, and then I realized something that froze me. The footsteps were keeping pace with my rhythm. I should have left that night. I should have dropped the flashlight on the ground, run down those stairs, and never looked back. But I didn't, because deep down, I still believed there was an explanation, that it was just the old building adjusting, that it was rats, that it was my head, too tired after months of poor sleep. I continued working. On the second night, I arrived prepared. I brought a portable radio to break the silence and a fully charged cell phone camera. I started my patrol earlier, while there was still some natural light coming through the dirty windows. Everything seemed normal, until I got to the seventh floor. 3 doors that I had locked the previous night were open, not just unlocked. Opened, wide open. I entered the first room. It was exactly as I had left it. Empty, dusty, lifeless. Nothing had been touched. But the door was open. I slammed it shut and locked it again. I went to the second one. Same thing. When I got to the third one, I stopped at the entrance. There were footprints on the ground, footprints in the dust. They weren't mine. I was wearing boots with checkered soles. These footprints were smooth and narrow, as if someone had walked barefoot through the office. They started in the middle of the room and disappeared near the window. They simply disappeared. I felt my stomach churn. I grabbed my phone and took a picture. My hand was shaking so much that the image came out blurry. I left and ran downstairs to the lobby. I sat on the floor, trying to breathe. That's when I heard the elevator. The damn elevator was working. The metallic sound of cables moving echoed throughout the building. I looked at the panel above the doors. The numbers lit up, one by one, ascending, 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. It stopped. The doors opened with a sharp creak. There was nobody inside. I stood paralyzed, staring at the empty elevator, illuminated by a pale fluorescent light that flickered frantically. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. Then, slowly, the doors began to close, and I saw it. Inside the elevator, in the left corner, there was a silhouette. No, it wasn't a silhouette. It was a shadow, but too dense, too dark. It didn't reflect the light. It only absorbed it. The doors slammed shut completely. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but my body wouldn't obey. I just watched the number panel light up again. No inside. 10th, 11th, 12th, and then 13th. My blood froze. There is no 13th floor. The building only has 12 floors. I knew that. It was in the contract, in the maps, in the diagrams they gave me. 12 floors, but the panel showed 13. And the elevator stopped there. I stood watching for how long, I don't know. It could have been seconds. It could have been minutes. But finally, the elevator began to descend. Slowly, very slowly. 12th, 11th, 10th. I got up, stumbling, and ran for the stairs. I stumbled down the steps, holding onto the rusty handrail, my breath coming out in short, desperate bursts. When I got to the ground floor, the elevator arrived too. The doors opened, empty. But inside it, on the scratched metal floor, there was something that hadn't been there before. Wet footprints, as if someone had just left, and they were walking in my direction. I stopped going home, not by choice, but because I realized it made no difference. After that night, I tried to leave the building. I swear I tried. But every time I reached the main door, something pulled me back. Not physically. It was worse than that. It was as if a part of me knew it was no use, that I already belonged there. On the 3rd night, I finally understood. I arrived at the building and something was different. The air, the temperature, everything seemed alive. As if the building were breathing. The walls groaned. The pipes buzzed, and the footsteps, the damned footsteps continued. Always above me, always following me. I decided to confront that. I went straight up to the 12th floor. I didn't stop. I didn't hesitate. I pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway. It was completely dark. My flashlight could barely pierce the darkness. I pointed it ahead and started walking. That's when I saw it. At the end of the corridor, a figure, with his back to me, property. It wasn't a shadow. It was solid, real. It was wearing something dark, broad shoulders. Its head was slightly tilted, as if it were listening to something. "Who's there?" My voice came out weak, trembling. The figure did not move. I took a step forward. My boot creaked on the ground. And then, slowly, the figure's head began to turn. Not completely, just enough for me to see the outline of a face. But there was no face, just darkness, an absence. A void where there should have been eyes, a nose, a mouth. Run. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life. I ran down the stairs, skipping steps, almost falling, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached the lobby and fell to my knees, breathless. That's when I saw the underground. There had always been a door in the lobby that I had never opened. It was marked restricted access, maintenance, but that night, it was ajar. And from inside came a sound, a low, constant hum, like a generator running. I knew I shouldn't go in, but I needed to understand. I descended the concrete stairs. The air grew colder with each step. The hum grew louder. At the bottom, there was a small room, lit by a single bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling, and on the wall, there were paintings, photos, documents. I approached. These were employee records, night watchmen, everyone who worked there before me. There were five names, 5 faces, all missing. Below each photo, handwritten notes. Michael Torres, last shift, March 12th, never returned home. David Green, reported hearing voices on the 8th floor, disappeared the following week. Sandra Kim, they only found her flashlight, on the 13th floor. 13th floor. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to leave, but I stopped. On the wall next to the door, there was a dusty mirror, and in the reflection, behind me, the figure was standing. The same one from the hallway. Property. Observing. I spun around violently. Nothing. I looked in the mirror again. She was still there, in the reflection, but not in the room. And then, slowly, she raised her hand, and he pointed upwards. I ran upstairs. I didn't think, I just ran. I crossed the lobby, went up the stairs, climbed floor after floor until I reached the 12th. But when I looked up, there was another flight of stairs, one that shouldn't exist. It led to the 13th floor, suffered. The door at the top was open. I went in. It was identical to the other floors, same hallway, same doors, but everything was clean. No dust, no mold, as if it were brand new. And at the end of the corridor, all 5 doors were open. I went in first. Michael Torres was sitting at the table, staring ahead, motionless. On Monday, David Green, in the same position. Sandra Kim in 3rd place. Everyone there, seated, waiting. And at the 5th door, there was an empty chair, with a sign on the table, my name. I don't remember how I left. I don't remember going downstairs. I only remember waking up in my car, trembling, with the sun rising. I looked at the building. He seemed normal, silent, dead. But I know the truth. It wasn't empty. He was waiting. And I know, deep down, that a part of me is still there, sitting in that chair, looking forward to the next one. Something happened to me, and to this day I can't understand it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked as a night watchman in a commercial building in downtown Milwaukee, 3rd shift, 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Alone. Always alone. The building had 8 floors and was practically empty. A few bankrupt companies, law offices that no one used anymore, rented rooms that were never occupied. The kind of place that smells of mold and accumulated dust. The kind of place where you can hear your own heart beating in the silence. The security room was on the ground floor, next to the main entrance. Small, cramped, 4 gray walls, a cold metal table, a creaking chair, and 12 old monitors hanging on the wall. Most of them flickered with static. Some didn't even work anymore. But the cameras recorded. They always recorded. I wasn't paid to think. I was paid to watch, to patrol every 2 hours, to write in the report, nothing to declare, to repeat. That night, everything seemed normal. Reheated coffee in a thermos, bluish light from the monitors illuminating my face, a constant electric buzzing that you learn to ignore, or try to. I was looking at my phone, no signal, as always, when I noticed something strange on monitor 7. 3rd floor camera, east corridor. The image was moving. Not the image on the screen. The camera itself, The angle was changing, slowly, as if someone were adjusting it manually. I kept watching. I thought it was a mechanical defect. Those cameras were old, installations from 2003, remote controls that no longer worked. But it kept moving, millimeter by millimeter, adjusting the focus, stopping, adjusting again, as if he were searching for something. I stood up from the chair. The wood creaked beneath my feet. I grabbed the flashlight. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The hallway was empty. Dust floated in the light of my flashlight. Doors were locked. The silence was so heavy, I could hear my own breath echoing off the walls. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I went back to the security room. I sat down. I looked at monitor 7. The camera was still showing movement on the screen, but not my movement. I blinked. I adjusted my eyes. And then I saw, in the left corner of the frame, stopped, a silhouette, human, perfectly still. I had just gone up there. The hallway was empty, but on the screen, something was there, with his back to the camera, and it didn't move. I tried to rationalize it. Reflection, shadow cast by a window, lens problem, residual image from an old recording overlaying the live feed. Anything, any explanation that made sense. But the figure was still there. Stop. I leaned closer to the monitor. The screen was old, pixels burned out, but I could still see the outline. A human body, or something that looked human. But there was something wrong. The proportions, the posture, too rigid, as if someone had forgotten how to stand naturally. And there was no breathing, no movement, not even the subtle swaying that every living body makes. Nothing. I looked at the clock. 2:15 in the morning. I made a second round. I checked all the doors, all locked. I went up to the 3rd floor again. I walked to the exact spot where the camera was pointing. Empty, just dust and the smell of old carpet. I went back to the room. The figure was still on the screen. 3:40, 4:20, 5 in the morning. Hours. She stayed there for hours, always with her back turned, always in the same place, like a statue, like something painted in reality. I called my supervisor 3 times. Voicemail. That outsourced security company was a joke. They paid poorly, didn't provide support, and hired anyone willing to be alone all night. I was alone, and something inside me began to feel cold. Not the cold of air conditioning, a different kind of cold. One that comes from within, that runs up your spine, that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end for no reason. I looked at the other monitors. Then I went back to screen 7. She was still there. Motionless, patient. My heart was racing. My breath was short. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. And then I heard it. One click. Mechanical. Loud. Camera 7 moved. Alone. Slowly. Adjusting the angle. Getting closer. Zooming in. I froze. My hand hung in midair, clutching the cold cup of coffee. My eyes were glued to the screen. The figure was closer now, occupying almost the entire frame. Broad back, drooping shoulders, head slightly tilted. And then, she turned her head, slowly. Very slowly, until you're facing the camera, where the face should have been. There was only darkness, a black blotch, no eyes, no mouth, no features. Just empty. I couldn't look away. My whole body was tense. I was sweating cold. My breath was caught in my throat. The figure remained like this, staring at me through the screen, through time, through the impossible. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that she knew I was watching. I don't know how long I stood there staring. Seconds, minutes, maybe more. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching me back. That emptiness where a face should have been, that impossible presence piercing the screen. My hand trembled as I reached for the monitor button. I hung up. The screen went black. Silence. Only the electrical hum of the other monitors. My breathing. Rapid. Irregular. I closed my eyes. I counted to 10. I tried to convince myself it was tiredness, insomnia, divorce stress, loneliness, anything. But then I heard steps coming from above, slow, heavy, dragging, as if someone were walking with difficulty, or as if they no longer knew how to walk properly. 3rd floor, exactly where the camera was pointing. My body froze, every muscle locked up, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples, in my ears, in my throat. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, they started again, closer, towards the stairs. I wanted to run. I wanted to walk out the front door and never come back, but my body wouldn't respond, as if something was holding me back in that chair, in that room, in that moment. My hand reached for the monitor button again. I called. The screen flickered. Static. Then the image returned. The hallway was empty. The figure was no longer there. A momentary relief, brief, illusory. Because the footsteps continued, going down, step by step, 2nd floor, 1st floor. I stood up. I tripped over the chair. I ran to the living room door. I locked it. I turned the key twice. I pushed a chair against it. I turned off the lights. I hid under the table. The footsteps reached the ground floor, dragged along, methodical. Stopping in front of the security room door, I covered my mouth with my hand. I held my breath. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Silence. And then, I heard it, breathing. On the other side of the door, heavy, damp, hoarse. It wasn't mine. I stayed there. I don't know for how long. Trembling, sweating, waiting to die. But nothing happened. As the dawn light began to filter through the cracks in the window, the footsteps simply stopped. I waited another hour. Then I went out. The door was locked from the inside. The hallway was empty. I quit my job that same day. By text message. I didn't even go back to pick up my final paycheck. Weeks later, I was driving past the building. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself that it had been real, or that it hadn't been. I looked up. The cameras were still there, and one of them moved, slowly, following my car down the street. Adjusting the focus, I floored the accelerator. I never went back to that part of town again. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I feel like something is still watching me, adjusting the focus, waiting. And I wonder, is she still there? Or maybe now, she knows where I live. Something happened to me in the early hours of Thursday morning, and to this day I don't know if it was real. My name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old and I work as a night watchman in a commercial building in downtown Portland, Oregon. 12 floors, half empty. Renovations have been stalled for 3 months due to lack of funding. I cover Tuesday and Thursday nights, always alone. I accept these shifts because I prefer the silence here to my empty house. Since the divorce, sleeping in a cold bed is worse than walking through dark hallways. At least here the echo keeps me company. The building smells of old paint, dust, and damp concrete. The hallway lights flicker at irregular intervals. The camera system covers only 6 floors. The others are in darkness. My base is a cramped room on the 8th floor. 2 chairs, a metal table, 6 trembling monitors, an old portable radio, and a thermos of coffee. The radio is my only contact with the security center, but they close at midnight. After that, it's just me, the silence, and the creaking of the building settling in. That night, everything was normal. I did my 11 p.m. rounds. I checked doors, lights, stairs. I went back to the living room. I sat down. I drank lukewarm coffee. I looked at the monitors. Nothing. It was at 2:07 a.m. that the radio crackled. It wasn't interference. It wasn't static. It was a voice. Calm, masculine, professional. Marcus, confirm your position. My stomach turned to ice. I grabbed the radio reflexively and pressed the button. This is Marcus, 8th floor. Who's on the line? Silence. Then the voice returned, and this time, it was closer. Marcus, where are you now? My hand started to tremble. Who are you? The switchboard closes at midnight. No one should be on this frequency. The voice didn't answer my question. It just repeated, Marcus. Just my name. Nothing else. I turned off the radio. I put it on the table. I took a deep breath, and then he spoke again. Marcus. The radio was off. The red button was off, but the voice kept coming from it, low, steady, as if it were right behind me. I stepped back from the table. My heart was pounding. I looked around. The room was empty. The door was locked. The radio crackled again. I'm coming up, Marcus. And then, in the hallway outside, I heard it. Steps, slow, metallic, echoing, going up. I tried to calm myself down. I took a deep breath. I thought fast. Interference. It had to be interference. Someone on the same frequency, some idiot with a ham radio having fun. Or maybe security from another building. Portland has dozens of commercial buildings. Frequencies can cross. But then, why did he know my name? I picked up my cell phone. I tried to call the call center. The call started ringing, but after 2 rings it dropped. I tried again, same thing. The 3rd time, it didn't even dial. The radio crackled. Marcus. I'm on the 3rd floor. My breath caught in my throat. I looked at the monitors. 6 cameras. Empty hallways. Still shadows. Nothing moved. But the camera on the 3rd floor showed only gray static. She had never failed before. The footsteps continued. Slow. Deliberate. The sound came from the stairwell. A metallic echo rising step by step. And then it stopped. Absolute silence, as if whoever it was waiting, listening. The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't just voices. It was breathing, heavy, controlled, like someone who has just climbed several flights of stairs. 4th floor now, Marcus. My hand reached for the door. I checked the lock. It was locked. I pushed a chair against it. I don't know why. I just needed something between me and the hallway. I went back to the monitors. The camera on the 4th floor started flashing. Image. Static. Image. Static. And for a second, just 1 second, I saw a silhouette, standing in the middle of the hallway, with her back to the camera. When the image returned, there was nothing there. My whole body was sweating. I turned the radio off again. I ripped out the battery. I threw it away. Silence. I counted to 10. Then the voice came out of the radio, still on the table, with no battery. 5th floor. I backed up against the wall. My legs trembled. The lights in the room flickered. Once, twice, then they dimmed, as if something were draining the power. The footsteps were now higher, closer. Going up. 6th floor, Marcus. The voice changed. It became lower, more intimate, as if it were speaking in my ear. 7th floor. I looked at the door. The doorknob began to turn, slowly, testing, but it was locked. The doorknob stopped. Silence. Then 3 beats, loud, metallic, break. 3 more knocks. The radio crackled one last time, and the voice, now almost a whisper, said something that made my blood run cold. Marcus, you know who I am. And I recognized it. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But I recognized that tone, that pause between words, the way my name was pronounced. It was my brother's voice, Daniel, who died 15 years ago. Daniel died when I was 19. Car accident on Highway 26, coming back from a party. Closed casket. I never wanted to see the body. Since then, I have never heard his voice again. Until that night. The knocking stopped. The hallway fell silent, but the radio continued crackling. Low static. As if someone were on the other end, waiting for me to say something. I couldn't move. My throat was closed up. My eyes were fixed on the door. Then the voice changed. It became softer, younger, trembling. "Marcus, why didn't you come pick me up?" It was Daniel. His voice at 22 years old, exactly as I remembered it. "Why did you leave me alone?" My legs gave way. I fell to my knees. Hot tears streamed down my face. Memories exploding in my head. The last time I spoke to him, the stupid fight we had. Me telling him he was irresponsible. Him slamming the door as he left, and I never apologized. "Daniel," my voice came out cracked. "Daniel, you're not here. You're dead. You died 15 years ago." Silence. Then the doorknob turned again. This time it didn't stop. The door opened. Slowly. I hadn't unlocked it. I was sure of it. The hallway outside was dark. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting crooked shadows on the walls. There was no one there, but I could feel it. Something was there, standing still. Just past the threshold, observing. The radio crackled one last time. "I've always been here, Marcus. You just never wanted to listen." And then I heard footsteps, not in the hallway, behind me. I turned around quickly. The room was empty, but on the wall, above the monitors, there was something that hadn't been there before. Letters, scratched into the concrete. Marcus. The handwriting was Daniel's. I knew every curve, every crooked letter. The way he always wrote my name when he left notes on the refrigerator. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Run. I left the room. I went down the stairs. I didn't look back. My footsteps echoed. Or were they someone else's footsteps? I don't know. I reached the ground floor. I pushed open the exit door. The cold morning air hit my face. The street was empty. City lights blinked in the distance. I fell to my knees on the sidewalk. I breathed. I cried. I trembled. The radio was still in my pocket. I didn't even remember picking it up. I took it off. I threw it on the ground. I stomped on it. I crushed it. Silence. I stayed there until the sun rose. I never went back to that building. I resigned by email. I moved to another city 3 months later. But every Thursday, at 2:07 a.m., my cell phone rings, unknown number, and the same message always appears on the screen. Confirm your position. I never answer. But sometimes, in the silence of the early morning, I hear his voice again, calling my name, going up, closer and closer. Something happened to me, and to this day I can't understand it. I worked as a night security guard in a corporate building in South Detroit. 12 floors of empty offices, most of them abandoned since the parent company went bankrupt in 2019. The place was for sale, but no one seemed interested. My job was simple: patrol every 2 hours, check the cameras, make sure no one broke in. The pay was good. Too good, actually. $18 an hour for sitting most of the time. When I asked why they paid so much, the manager just said, "High turnover, nobody stays very long." I laughed. I thought people couldn't stand boredom. My shift ran from 10 at night to 6 in the morning. For the first few weeks, it was boring, but peaceful. Fluorescent lights buzzing, the smell of old carpet and cleaning products. Silence. A lot of silence. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. I had a printed map of the building, mandatory, according to the rules. I needed to mark each checkpoint during my rounds. Simple, Ground floor, east stairs to the 6th floor, north corridor, west stairs back to the ground floor. 15 minutes, maximum. It was on my 12th night that I realized. I was on the 5th floor, following the north corridor as usual. But when I reached the end, where the west staircase door should have been, there was no door. Just a wall. Peeling beige wallpaper with damp stains. I looked at the map. The staircase should be there. I went back down the corridor. Maybe I'd turned the wrong way, but the corridor was straight. There were no other ways. I checked the signs on the office doors. 501, 503, 505. Everything matched. Then I saw. At the end of the corridor, the door to the stairs, I was there where there used to be a wall. I stood there, staring. My heart started beating faster. Maybe I was tired. I worked 2 jobs. Little sleep. It made sense. But when I went through the door and started to go down, something bothered me. The steps seemed different, wider or narrower. I couldn't tell. And the sound of my footsteps echoed incorrectly. I reached the ground floor and returned to the monitoring room. 12 small screens showed empty corridors, silent staircases, locked doors. Everything normal, except for the camera on the 5th floor. I saw myself, standing in the hallway, staring at the wall, but I washer in the monitoring room. Was the recording delayed? No. The other cameras were showing real time. I could see the time in the corner of the screen, 1:47 a.m. My watch showed 1:47 a.m. On the screen, my silhouette turned its head, slowly, and looked directly at the camera. I hadn't done that. I turned off the monitor. I took a deep breath. I turned it back on. The screen showed the hallway empty. I picked up the map. I traced the route with my finger, checking each marking. Everything seemed right, but something inside me whispered that it wasn't. At 3:30 a.m., I made my second round. This time, I noted every detail, every license plate, every door, every turn. When I returned to the monitoring room, I compared it with the map. 3 runners didn't match. 3 corridors that I had certainty of having traveled. They didn't exist on the map. And on the map, there was a corridor on the 8th floor that I swore I'd never seen before. My hand was trembling as I held the paper. That's when I heard it. Steps, above me, slow, regular, on the 12th floor, where there shouldn't be anyone. I grabbed the flashlight and the master key. My protocol dictated that I call the police if I detected an intrusion, but something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe fear of seeming paranoid, maybe I already knew the police weren't going to find anything. I climbed the east stairs. Each step echoed differently from the last. On the 7th floor, the light flickered. It went out for 3 seconds. When it came back on, the color was wrong. More yellowish, sickly. 8th floor, 9th, 10th, the footsteps had stopped. I reached the 12th floor. The door had a sign, restricted access, maintenance only. I had never been up there before, nor did I need to. But now, I turned the key. The door opened with a damp creak. The hallway was identical to the others, worn gray carpet, faux wood doors, numbered signs, 1201, 1203, 1205. But the air was different, colder. And it had a smell, metallic, like old coins. I walked slowly, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The overhead lights were off. Only my light remained. Then I saw my reflection, in a glass window to the left, but the reflection was looking to the right. I stopped. I turned my head to the right. My reflection continued looking to the right. I raised my left hand. The reflex raised its left hand. 2 seconds later, my stomach churned. I recoiled. The reflection stood still, just staring at me, at my face, my clothes, my flashlight. But it wasn't me. I ran. Back to the stairs. I went down. Fast. Too fast. I skipped steps. 11th. 10th. Eighth. Eighth again. I stopped, breathless. I looked at the sign on the wall. 8th floor. I went down another flight of stairs. 8th floor. Again. 8th floor, I screamed. My voice came back muffled, as if the building had swallowed it whole. I tried to climb. 9th, 10th, 11th, 8th, always the 8th. I left the stairs. I went into the hallway. I needed to find another way out. The west stairs, the fire escape, the elevator. The corridor stretched out before me, straight, endless. I started walking. I passed by the same doors, 801, 803, 805, 807, and then 801. Again, I turned around. The hallway was identical. 801 behind me, 801 ahead. I tried to open a door, locked, all of them locked. I knocked. I shouted, nothing. That's when I looked at the cameras in the corner of the ceiling. The red light was on. They were recording. I ran until I found a window. I broke the glass with my flashlight. I was going to jump. I didn't care. 8 floors. I'd rather that than be trapped. But when I looked outside, I didn't see the street. I saw the hallway. The same hallway where I was. Through the window. As if the building had folded in on itself. And in the reflection of the broken glass, I saw myself, in the hallway on the other side. Looking back, my heart almost stopped. Because in the reflection, I was smiling, and my hands were covered in something dark. I touched my hands. They were clean. I looked at my reflection again. Now he was closer, on the other side of the glass, as if he had walked. I hadn't moved. I stepped back. I stumbled. I fell. My flashlight rolled away. The light spun across the floor, and on the wall next to it, projected by the flashlight's light, my shadow. But she didn't fall for it with me. He stood up, observing. I grabbed the flashlight. I stood up. I ran. I don't know where. I just ran. Until I saw it. The monitoring room. How had I gotten back there? It didn't matter. I went in. I locked the door. The screens were on, and in all of them, me. Walking through the hallways, going upstairs, going downstairs, standing in doorways, looking at cameras, 12 versions of me, all in different places. But I was here, locked in, alone. So, on the center screen, one of the versions turned around, and he started walking towards the monitoring room. I looked at the door. I heard the doorknob turn. The door didn't open. The doorknob stopped turning. Silence. I looked at the screens. The version of me in the hallway had vanished. All the screens showed empty corridors now. But I knew. I knew something was on the other side of that door. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Nothing. I picked up the desk phone. No signal. I tried the landline. Deadline. Not even a dial tone. I checked my phone, 4:13 a.m. There were still almost 2 hours left until the end of my shift. But when I looked again, 4:13 a.m. Again, 4:13 a.m. Time had stopped. That's when I remembered. The manager. High turnover. Nobody stays very long. I opened the desk drawer. Inside was an old notebook. Notes from other security guards. I flipped through it quickly. 3rd night. The corridors change. Don't trust the map. Friday night. I saw someone on the cameras. It was me, but it wasn't. 9th night. I tried to leave. All the doors led back inside. 11th night. I understand. The building won't let us leave. It needs someone. The last entry was recent, 2 weeks ago. 12th night. I'll try. If you're reading this, don't stay until the end of the shift. My 12th night. I dropped the notebook. My hands were trembling. I needed to leave. Now. I unlocked the door. I opened it slowly. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights buzzing, everything normal. I walked to the main exit. The double-glazed door, I could see the street through it, the lampposts, the empty parking lot, my car. I pushed, locked. I turned the master key. I pushed again. The door opened. I felt the cold night air, the smell of wet asphalt. The relief almost made me cry. I took a step outside, and I stepped on the carpet. I looked down. Worn gray carpet. I looked up. I was in the hallway on the 5th floor. The door behind me was locked. Sign, emergency exit. I opened it. On the other side, another corridor. I tried every exit, every door, windows, fire escapes. They all took them back inside. The building had no exterior, no more. I went back to the monitoring room. I collapsed into the chair. I stared at the screens, and then I understood. In the cameras, there were people, not many, 3, 4, walking down the hallways, alone, lost, security uniforms. They never left, and now I wasn't going either. I picked up the notebook. I wrote, 12th night. If you're reading this, don't stay until the end of your shift. But it was too late. For me. And now I knew. The building wasn't empty. It never had been. It was full of knots, trapped, walking, searching for exits that don't exist, appearing on camera, leaving reflections, footsteps, shadows. I looked at the clock. 4:13 a.m. Always 4:13 a.m. On the screen in front of me, I saw myself, standing on the 8th floor, looking at the camera, but I was here, in the monitoring room. Or was it? I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was in the hallway, flashlight in hand. I closed it again. Monitoring room, again. Stairs, again. 12th floor. I was everywhere, at the same time, and none of them. The building had absorbed me, become a part of itself. Just another security guard trapped in the cameras, in the shadows, in the reflections. Another one who never made it past the final round. Now I understand why nobody stays in this job for very long. Because those who stay never leave. And if you're listening to me now, if you're thinking about taking a job like that, as a night security guard in an empty building, in a place where they pay too well and nobody lasts more than 2 weeks, please, don't go. Because when you go in, when the building decides it's time, you'll understand. The final shift never ends. If you work the night shift, tell me where. And if you've ever been through something similar, you already know what to do.